Say it again, Ivy said, holding her phone up so the screen caught the kitchen light. Say her name wasn't part of picking out my ring, Derek. Say it again and look me in the eye. Derek didn't look away, so I asked her opinion. She's got good taste. That's not a crime. It's not like I'm still... You didn't just ask her opinion, Ivy said. You asked her to pick it. There's a difference, and you know there is because you never told me her name was anywhere near this ring. The wedding was 6 weeks out. The deposits were paid, the invitations were stamped and sitting in a shoebox by the front door, addressed in Ivy's own handwriting. What she didn't know yet, standing there in her socks on the cold kitchen tile, was that every single person in that shoebox was going to hear this story from her own mouth, at the party meant to celebrate the two of them. Ivy Calloway was 29, worked in medical billing at a clinic downtown, and had never once in her life considered herself the dramatic type. She liked things settled. She liked plans that stayed plans. When she met Derek Holt at a mutual friend's barbecue almost 3 years earlier, what drew her in wasn't fireworks. It was how steady he seemed. He remembered small details. He texted back promptly. He didn't play games. For a woman who dated exactly 2 men who ghosted her mid-relationship, steady felt like winning the lottery. They moved in together after a year. They talked about a dog, then didn't get one because of the lease. They talked about a house, then a wedding. And 8 months ago, on a Friday night in October, Derek had gotten down on one knee in the living room, holding a small navy box, and said the kind of things people say in movies, that he couldn't picture his life without her, that she was it for him, that he'd never been sure of anything. Ivy had cried. She said yes before he even finished opening the box all the way. The ring itself was beautiful. A cushion-cut stone, rose gold band, a thin halo of tiny diamonds around it that caught light from every angle. Ivy had shown it to everyone, her mother, her co-workers, the barista at her regular coffee shop. She never once thought to ask where the design had come from, because why would she? Derek had never been the type to plan anything on his own before, and she'd found that oddly touching. The idea that for this, he'd actually put in the work. The truth came out by accident, the way most truths like this do. Ivy had been looking for a photo, an old picture of the two of them from a trip to the coast, something for the guest book their wedding planner wanted printed. She scrolled back through Derek's phone, which he'd left charging on the counter, unlocked, because after 3 years, neither of them thought twice about that anymore. She wasn't snooping. She told herself that later, over and over, like it mattered. She found the photo. But right above it in his messages was a group chat labeled Ring Hunt, and it wasn't with his brother or his college roommate, the 2 people Ivy assumed had helped him shop. It was with Paige Lindqvist. Derek's ex-girlfriend of 2 years, the one he described, whenever her name came up as ancient history, someone from a version of his life Ivy had never met and never needed to. Ivy had seen exactly one photo of her once on an old tagged post from years back. Dark hair, easy smile, the kind of woman who looked like she'd never once had a bad hair day. The chat went back 4 months. Ivy sat down on the kitchen floor and read every message. Derek, okay, don't laugh, but I need a second opinion. Does this look too flashy? Paige, send pic. No, that's perfect, actually. That halo setting is exactly what I would have picked. Get that one. You sure? Not too much? Babe, I have never once been wrong about jewelry. Trust me. There was more. A back and forth about the band color, rose gold versus white gold, Paige weighing in like she was choosing something for herself. A message from Derek near the end made Ivy's stomach fold in on itself. Derek, you're still the only one who actually gets my taste? You know that? I know. Ivy read that line 4 times, then she stood up, grabbed her own phone, and took screenshots of everything, hands shaking so hard the first 3 photos came out blurry. That was the moment Derek walked in from the garage and found her sitting at the kitchen table, his phone in one hand, hers in the other. Ivy, what are you doing with my... Sit down, she said. We need to talk about your ring hunt. That confrontation went nowhere good. Derek tried 3 different explanations in the span of 10 minutes. First, it was nothing, just a friend's opinion. Then it was because Paige worked retail for a while and knew about jewelry. Then, when Ivy pointed out the "you're still the only one who gets my taste" line, he actually said the words, "That doesn't mean what you think it means." "Then tell me what it means, Derek," Ivy said. "Because from where I'm sitting, you designed my engagement ring with your ex-girlfriend like it was a group project, and you didn't think that was worth mentioning." "I didn't think you'd react like this." "Like what?" "Like a person who found out her fiancé has a whole secret conversation with his ex about the most important purchase of our engagement?" Derek rubbed his face. "It's not secret. It's just, I didn't bring it up because I knew you'd blow it out of proportion." That sentence did more damage than anything else he'd said. Ivy went quiet. She'd heard that line before from her father growing up, right before something that absolutely deserved a reaction got waved off as an overreaction. She recognized the shape of it immediately, and something in her chest went cold and still. "I'm not blowing anything out of proportion," she said. "I'm reading exactly what you wrote." She didn't cancel the wedding that night. She told herself she needed to think, needed to talk to someone before she did anything permanent. So she called Tasha. Tasha Okafor had been Ivy's best friend since college, the kind of friend who didn't sugarcoat things ever, which was exactly what Ivy needed and also slightly afraid of at that moment. Tasha showed up within the hour, wine in one hand, a bag of takeout in the other, and sat with Ivy at her kitchen table, scrolling through every screenshot twice. "Okay," Tasha said finally, setting the phone down like it had personally offended her. "So he let his ex pick your ring." "He says he just asked her opinion." "Ivy, look at this message. You're still the only one who gets my taste. That's not asking an opinion, that's a whole vibe, that's flirting with a paper trail." "I know. Does he know you still have this chat saved? Screenshotted?" Ivy hesitated. "No." Tasha's eyebrows went in a way that made it clear a plan was starting to form somewhere behind them. "Good," she said. "Keep it that way." Over the next 2 weeks, Ivy told herself she was handling things calmly. She wasn't. She was quietly falling apart while pretending to plan a wedding, saying yes to cake tastings and seating charts while replaying that message thread on a loop in her head. Derek, for his part, acted like the conversation in the kitchen had resolved something. He brought home flowers twice. He said, "I love you" more often than usual, in that overcorrecting way people do when they know they're on thin ice, but refuse to admit why. What made it worse, and this was the part Ivy hadn't told even Tasha yet, was that she checked his phone again 1 week later, out of a paranoia she hated herself for. The group chat with Paige was still active, not about the ring anymore, about the wedding itself. "Paige, so are you actually going through with it?" "Yeah." "I mean, why wouldn't I?" "No reason, just weird to think about. It's fine, it's good, she's good for me." "Good for you" is a weird way to talk about your fiancé. "You know what I mean." Ivy stared at that thread longer than she should have. "She's good for me." Not "I love her." Not "I can't wait to marry her." Good for me. Like Ivy was a vitamin supplement, something sensible and beige. She didn't confront him about that one. Instead, she started building something else entirely. Quietly, carefully, the way you'd build a case rather than a bridge. The engagement party was still on the calendar, 4 weeks out, at a rented event space downtown that both families had already RSVP'd to. Derek's mother, Carmen Holt, had been the one pushing hardest for it, insisting on inviting nearly 90 people, treating it less like an engagement party and more like a soft launch of the wedding itself. Carmen had never been Ivy's biggest fan. Not unkind, exactly, just cool in a way that made Ivy feel like she was always being quietly evaluated. Carmen had picked the venue. Carmen had picked the caterer. Carmen, Ivy realized somewhere in that second week, had also unknowingly given her the perfect stage. "You're not actually thinking about doing this at the party," Tasha said when Ivy first floated the idea over lunch. "In front of everyone?" "He humiliated me in private," Ivy said. "I found out about it by accident, alone in my own kitchen. I'm not interested in doing this quietly, so he gets to keep his version of the story." "What's his version of the story?" "That I overreacted. That it was nothing. That I called off a wedding over a text thread." Ivy stirred her coffee, not really drinking it. "If I end this in private, that's the story that survives. I need there to be a room full of witnesses who heard it in his own words." Tasha studied her for a long moment. You know this is going to blow up spectacularly. I'm counting on it. The plan, once it took shape, was almost embarrassingly simple. Ivy didn't need to fabricate anything, didn't need theatrics beyond what already existed in black and white on her phone. She just needed the right moment, the right screen, and the right amount of nerve. The venue Carmen had booked came with a projector normally used for the slideshow of engagement photos that ran on a loop during the party. Pictures of Ivy and Derek at the coast, at his cousin's wedding, at a pumpkin patch 2 Octobers ago. All of it set to soft acoustic music nobody really listened to. Ivy had access to that slideshow file. She'd built half of it herself. 2 days before the party, she sat down with Tasha and added 4 new slides to the end of the loop. Screenshots. Clean, cropped, time-stamped. The ring hunt chat. The good for me chat. Nothing edited, nothing exaggerated. Just Derek's own words next to Paige's own words, set to loop right after a photo of the two of them laughing on a beach. If this goes how I think it's going to go, Tasha said, you understand there's no walking it back after. I don't want to walk it back, Ivy said. I want everyone in that room to know exactly why there's not going to be a wedding. The night of the party, the event space glowed with string lights and centerpieces of white ranunculus. 90-some guests in cocktail attire clustered around high-top tables, the open bar doing brisk business by 7 o'clock. Ivy wore a soft green dress Derek had complimented twice already. Derek wore the blazer his mother had picked out. Carmen worked the room like a hostess at her own coronation, introducing Ivy to relatives she'd met exactly once before. Around 8:30, after the toasts had started, Derek's best man delivering a rambling, affectionate speech about their college years, Carmen following with a tearful one about finally getting a daughter. The DJ cued the slideshow to start its loop on the big screen behind the head table, the way it had all night, unremarkable, background noise for conversation. Ivy waited until the room had quieted for the next toast, waited until she saw her own father lift his glass halfway, and then she stood up first. Actually, she said loud enough to Carrie, I want to say something too, if that's all right. The room turned toward her, warm and expectant, the way rooms do at engagement parties, ready for something sweet. I've been with Derek for almost 3 years, Ivy said, holding the microphone the best man had just set down. And for most of that, I thought I knew everything about him worth knowing. Turns out there was a whole chapter I didn't know about, and I actually have it saved if anyone wants to see it. Derek's face changed first, that particular kind of stillness that comes right before panic. Ivy. She didn't look at him. She looked at the screen behind her, where the slideshow, right on cue, cut from a photo of the two of them at the pumpkin patch to a clean, cropped screenshot of a group chat labeled Ring Hunt. A ripple went through the room, confused at first, guests squinting up at the screen like it might resolve into something else. Then the second slide loaded, the message about Derek's taste, Paige's little laughing emoji underneath it, and the confusion sharpened into something else entirely. Somewhere near the bar, a woman gasped audibly. Carmen's wine glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Ivy, turn that off, Derek said, standing up now, his voice cracking in a way it hadn't in 3 years of Ivy knowing him. You can turn it off, Ivy said, still not looking at him. It's your phone number in the screenshots, not mine. The third slide loaded. Are you actually going through with it? She's good for me. A few guests were already pulling out their own phones, taking pictures of the screen, because that's what people do now, whether you want them to or not. This is insane, Derek said to the room now, not just to Ivy. This is completely out of context, that conversation was. I have the full thread saved if anyone wants the context, Ivy said, finally turning to face him. I'd be happy to send it to your mother directly. Carmen had gone very pale, very still, in the way people go when they realize a story they've already told several relatives is about to collapse in real time. Derek, Carmen said, quietly, but not quietly enough. Who's Paige? Derek didn't answer. He was looking at Ivy the way a man looks at a door he thought was locked and just discovered wasn't. Ivy set the microphone down on the table with a small, deliberate click. Then she reached up, twisted the ring off her finger. The ring Paige had helped pick, the ring Derek had proposed with 8 months earlier, believing none of this would ever surface, and held it out, not to Derek, but to Carmen. setting it gently into her mother-in-law's open palm before the woman even understood what was happening. "You picked this venue for us," Ivy said. "You picked the caterer, the flowers, all of it. You did all of that in good faith, and I don't want you to think this was about you, so I'm giving this back through you, since he doesn't seem able to catch anything I throw at him tonight." Carmen looked down at the ring in her hand like it had appeared out of thin air. "Ivy, I had no idea." "I know you didn't," Ivy said. "That's exactly why I'm telling you now in front of everyone. Instead of in a phone call, you'd have to decide whether to believe." Derek reached for the ring, and Carmen closed her hand around it, pulling it back out of his reach, which told Ivy everything she needed to know about how that particular relationship was about to change too. "Mom," Derek started. "Don't," Carmen said. Just the one word, flat and final, the kind of tone Ivy had never once heard her use in 3 years of knowing her. The room had gone fully silent now, the kind of silence that has weight to it. 90 people holding their breath at once. Somewhere near the back, Ivy's father had stood up without anyone noticing, one hand resting protectively on the back of her empty chair. "I'm sorry," Ivy said to the room, and she meant it. Not sorry for what she'd done, but sorry that this was the version of the night they were all going to remember instead of the one they'd shown up for. "There's not going to be a wedding. I didn't want you all driving out here for nothing, so I figured you should hear why tonight from me, instead of getting a text in a few weeks with some excuse about timing." She picked her purse up off the back of her chair, unhurried, the way you'd leave a restaurant after a meal that hadn't agreed with you. Tasha was already on her feet, jacket over one arm, waiting. "Ivy, please," Derek said, his voice smaller now, the panic finally catching up to him in front of everyone he knew. "Can we just talk about this at home?" "There isn't a home," Ivy said. "There's an apartment with my name on the lease too, and I'll be back for my things this week when you're not in it." She walked out through the middle of the room, past tables of people she'd once hoped would be her family, past the sweetheart table with its 2 empty chairs and its centerpiece of white ranunculus, and out through the double doors into the parking lot, where the night air felt like the first honest thing she'd touched all evening. By the time Ivy and Tasha reached the car, Ivy's phone had already started buzzing. Derek, 3 times in a row. Then a text from a number she didn't recognize, which turned out, when she finally opened it 2 days later, to be Paige. Asking unbelievably if Ivy had really needed to drag her into it, as though her name hadn't been sitting right there in black and white the whole time, as though somebody else had typed those messages for her. Ivy didn't answer that text. She blocked the number instead and felt lighter for it. The fallout took on a life of its own over the following weeks. A cousin of Derek's had recorded almost the entire speech on her phone, and it made its way around a group chat, then another, then somehow onto Ivy's own social media without her ever posting it herself. Friends of friends sharing it, captioned things like, "The way she said through you," and just walked out. Ivy didn't chase the attention, but she didn't mind it either. For the first time since she'd found that group chat on the kitchen floor, she felt like the story belonged to her instead of something that had happened to her. Carmen called her 4 days later, not to plead Derek's case, but to apologize. For the party, for not seeing it. For the 90 guests who'd shown up expecting cake and gotten a reckoning instead. "I raised him better than that," Carmen said on the phone, her voice tight. "I don't know what I missed." "You didn't miss anything," Ivy told her. "He just didn't think anyone would ever find out." Derek moved out of the apartment 2 weeks later into his brother's spare room, still texting Ivy long messages she never finished reading, still insisting the whole thing had been blown out of proportion, right up until the day he stopped texting altogether. Around the same time, Ivy heard through the same cousin's group chat that Paige had also stopped answering his calls, once it became clear that being the only one who gets his taste hadn't actually gotten either of them anything worth having. Ivy kept the shoebox of invitations by the door for another month before she finally recycled them, one by one, standing at her kitchen counter with a cup of coffee, in no particular hurry. She didn't cry doing it. She'd done most of her crying already, in the 2 weeks before the party, back when she still thought there was a version of this where she stayed quiet and small and let somebody else write the ending. She kept the screenshots too, just in case, though she never needed them again. Some stories, once you've told them out loud in front of 90 people, don't need repeating. They just need to be true. If you were in that room, or if you've ever found something on somebody's phone you wish you hadn't, tell me what you would have done differently. Would you have confronted him quietly, or would you have waited for the room to fill up first? Let me know in the comments, and if you like this one, stick around, because the next story's just as messy.